Okay, firstly, before we go into the material, let's recap a little bit on what we have covered. Firstly, we have covered the preface, a short preface by the author, Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi. And we have covered the introduction, basically covering the 3 criteria for evaluating a spiritual system. The 3 criteria are: the first, we covered the range of suffering. Second, the cause of suffering. The third one, cutting the cause of suffering. And then finally, now we are going to enter into the actual component of the Noble Eightfold Path. So I feel like this is the exciting portion of this book. Are you guys excited? Okay. Okay, so as usual, I will start first. Chapter 2, Right View, Samadhi. The 8 factors of the Noble Eightfold Path are not steps to be followed in sequence one after another. They can be more aptly described as components rather than as steps, comparable to the intertwining strands of a single cable that requires the contributions of all the strands for maximum strength. With a certain degree of progress, all 8 factors can be present simultaneously, each supporting the others. However, until that point is reached, some sequence in the unfolding of the path is inevitable. Considered from the standpoint of practical training, the 8 path factors divide into 3 groups. First, the moral discipline group, Sila Khanda, made up of right speech, right action, and right livelihood. Second, the concentration group, Samadhi Khanda, made up of right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. And third, the wisdom group, Panya Khanda, made up of right view and right intention. These 3 groups represent 3 stages of training: the training in the higher moral discipline, the training in the higher consciousness, and the training in the higher wisdom. Okay, firstly, any words you find difficult here? How about aptly or uply? So I think it's aptly, in a manner that is appropriate or suitable in the circumstances. So let me zoom in. And then how about strengths? Strengths, I think, is like a string. So, but let's check. Strengths. Yeah, I think this definition is more suitable. Strand is a single thin length of something such as thread, fiber, or wire, especially as twisted together with others. Yeah. Okay. Any other words? I think that's it for me. Okay. So maybe who would like to read next? How about Jolene?
Morning. So I'll start from the second paragraph. Is that right, Marcel?
Yes.
The order of the 3 trainings is determined by the overall aim and direction of the path. Since the final goal to which the path leads, liberation from suffering, depends ultimately on uprooting ignorance, which is the climax of the path, must be the training directly opposed to ignorance. This is the training in wisdom, designed to awaken the faculty of penetrative understanding, which see things as they really are. Wisdom unfolds by degrees, but even the faintest flashes of insight presuppose as their basis a mind that has been concentrated, cleared of disturbance and distraction. Concentration can only be achieved through the training in the higher consciousness, the second division of the path, which brings the very calm and collectedness needed to develop wisdom. But in order for the mind to be unified in concentration, a check must be placed on all the unwholesome dispositions which ordinarily dominate its workings. Since these dispositions disperse the beam of attention and it scattered it among a multitude of concerns, the unwholesome dispositions continue to rule as long as they are permitted to gain expression through the channels of our body and speech as bodily and verbal deeds. Therefore, at the very outset of training, it is very necessary to restrain the faculties of action to prevent them from becoming tools of the defilements. This task is accomplished by the first division of the path, the training in moral discipline. Thus, the path evolves through its three stages, with moral discipline as the foundation for concentration. Concentration, the foundation for wisdom, and then wisdom, the direct instrument for reaching liberation.
Thanks, Sister Jolene. Okay, firstly, are there any difficult words? How about presuppose? So presuppose means require as a precondition of possibility or coherence. So in this sentence, wisdom unfolds by degrees, but even the faintest flashes of insight presuppose as their basis as a mind that has been concentrated, cleared of disturbance and distraction. How about dispositions? Do you guys know what disposition means? Okay, let's just define it. A person's inherent qualities of mind and character, the first definition. The second is the way in which something is placed or arranged, especially in relation to other things. I think the first definition is more relevant. Let's see.
I think, bro, in this para, we can relate it back to the basis of the three higher trainings, which is 戒定慧. I think if we associate that, it will be easier for us to remember this paragraph. 戒 is our moral discipline. 定 is concentration. 慧 is wisdom. So if we kind of remember the Eightfold Path is actually related to these three also basic higher training, which is 戒, 定, and 慧. Yeah. Then we can relate this paragraph in a way to what they're trying to say. 戒 is actually the basics of all Buddhist trainings, right? So 戒 means that we have the 5 precepts. Precept 就是戒. So the lay followers, we take 5 precepts, 8 precepts, where the monastic, they take, for nuns and monks, they take 280 to 335 precepts. So I think that's the basis of how we all started training our mind. I think that's what this first para is trying to tell us first to start with. After we have the moral discipline in ourselves, then our mind can become calm and concentrated. Because if our mind is not like full of doing not so not peaceful things, we become harmful to others, our mind cannot be calm, right? So when our mind cannot be calm, we cannot concentrate. So we have to have the basic ethical disciplines. Then our mind could be like, feel good. Then we can calm ourselves down. Then the concentration kind of evolves in a very natural way in the inner peace. So I think that's why it helps in our concentration, as what the second para has explained itself. So 戒, then think. So once our mind is calm, we see clarity. I think that's what the next thing is saying. And that's when our wisdom can evolve. And so the path leads to wisdom, became the foundation for wisdom. And finally, wisdom that helps us see the direct, like we see dependent arising better. So when we see dependent arising better, we are able to open up our mind and kind of cut through our dual mind, cut through our, judgment, through many, many things in our life. And then eventually we're able to retrain our mind to look at things differently. And finally, I think, of course, I'm not trained in all that, but just what the sentence says, it became an instrument for reaching liberation. I think that's how the para is trying to explain to us. Yeah.
Yes, very good. Thanks a lot for explaining to us, Jolene. Okay, anyone else would like to share for the first two paragraphs? If not, then Jolene, would you like to nominate the next person to read?
What about Tracy?
Perfectity sometimes arises over an apparent inconsistencies in the arrangement of the path, factors, and the threefold training. Wisdom, which include right view and right intention, is the last stage in the threefold training. Yet its factors are placed at the beginning of the path rather than at its end, as might be expected according to the canon of strict consistency. The sequence of the path factors, however, is not the result of a careless slip, but is determined by an important logical consideration, mainly that right view.
Sorry, Tracy, I think you skipped one line.
Oh.
Yeah, it's not here.
Okay, as might be expected according to the canon of strict consistency, the sequence of the path factors, however, is not the result of a careless slip, but is determined by an important logical consideration, namely that right view and right intention of a primary type are called for at the outset as the spurs for entering the threefold training. Right view provides the perspective of practice, right intention, the sense of direction. But the two do not aspire in this preparatory role. For when the mind has been refined by the training in moral discipline and concentration, it arrives at a superior right view and right intention, which now form the proper training in the higher wisdom.
Thanks, Tracy. Any difficult word here that you would like to define? How about perplexity? Perplexity is sometimes like complexity, right? But let's see what Google says. Inability to deal with or understand something. The second definition, an entangled state. It's a very good word, big word. Okay, how about cannon? Do you guys know what cannon means? It's not the weapon cannon. That one is with double N. Okay, let's see what Google says. Canon definition. Okay. The first definition, a general law, rule, principle, or criterion by which something is judged. But I think the second definition applies more to our context. A collection or list of sacred books accepted as genuine. The example I gave here is the biblical canon, but in our context, of course, it's the Pali canon. Okay. Okay, any other words you would like to be defined? If not, Tracy, would you like to nominate the next person to read?
Sister Doreen, please. Thank you.
Right view is the forerunner of the entire path, the guide for all the other factors. It enables us to understand our starting point, our destination, and successive landmarks to pass as practice advances. To attempt to engage in the practice without a foundation of right view is to risk getting lost in the futility of undirected movement. Doing so might be compared to wanting to drive someplace without consulting a roadmap or listening to the suggestions of an experienced driver. One might get into the car and start to drive, but rather than approaching closer to one's destination, one is more likely to move further away from it. To arrive at the desired place, one has to have some idea of its general direction and of the roads leading to it. Analogous consideration apply to the practice of the path, which takes place in a framework of understanding established by right view.
Okay, thanks, Sister Doreen. Any difficult word here? Forerunner, maybe? First definition, a person or thing that precedes the coming or development of someone or something else. The second one, a sign or warning of something to come. So I think the first definition applies more to our context. Right view is the forerunner of the entire path. So right view is the thing that precedes the coming or development of the path. Guide for all the other factors. And how about futility? Futility is something like, seems to imply that something is useless. So let's see what Google says. Pointlessness or uselessness, okay? Okay, I think that's about it for the difficult word. So, okay. We have 3 paragraphs left, but I think I want to continue tomorrow because we are about time. But before that, maybe we can just recap what we have read before we wrap up. So, we have covered the, Sister Jolene has kindly explained for us the first 2 paragraphs. How about the 3rd paragraphs and the 4th paragraphs? So anyone would like to share?
Who don't mind, I'd like to share a little bit on right view.
Okay.
Okay, so it's a very important part of the Eightfold Path, the right view, because if we don't get the view right, we will not be practicing the Eightfold Path in the, how should I put it? It gives us actually so much benefits to liberation if we don't get the view right. So I think that's why Venerable Bukit Budi purposely put it as our very first topic to discuss. And I sincerely would want that if we look into this word right view, we can question ourselves a lot. Sometimes we think it's right view, and it's very subjective, what is right view. So the best way to ask question, what then is a right view? Because most of the time, we will use our layman way and our experiences to say this is the right view. And thus, when Bukit Budi write this part, right, he says that you want to know your right view, you make sure you get the right teacher first. You must listen to the right teacher, because a lot of times, especially in the religious path, we do not know up till the end of the path, walk to the end, then we know whether we are right or wrong. But if we don't do our homework and know that what is the right teacher, we might end up walking at the end to find we are in the wrong path. So establishing the right view becomes a very important part of the process. And it is very difficult as an early practitioner like us to know what is right view at the beginning. And thus, what this paragraph say, looking for the right teacher first. And if we believe Buddha is the right teacher or not in the first place. Yeah, we should question that in our mind. And then we should ask ourselves that question. If he is, then what he say and what we have been thinking of would be a very good reflection on our daily lives. Yeah. Then our faith can grow. Because if we do not think that this is the right teacher, we keep on like doubting it and challenging it, then seriously, your view became the supreme over the Buddha's view all the time. And it will be harder to progress in the path. So the faith of that became quite fundamentally important, and the questioning of it also becomes important, because if we investigate, we might find that our view sometimes is very drastic and may affect our path. Yeah. So I think on this para, it actually explains that very well, that we must question ourselves, how much do we really believe in the Buddha's way and the Buddha's view of our life? Yeah.
Very good, Sister Jolene. I think very well explained. And if I may just ask deeper, firstly, you said right view is important, yes. And then how do we know? How do we know right view? Is to find the right teacher. And then I was about to ask you, then how do we find the right teacher? Then you mentioned it's the Buddha. Then the last question would be, how do we know that the Buddha is the right teacher? So what would your answer be?
We are investigation of our life. We no need to believe in everything that he says, but you can investigate. And through investigation, that's the only way our faith can grow, because we don't believe in blind faith. So you no need to believe everything you hear or you think at this moment, but we need to investigate. And that's how we can grow our right view.
Okay. Very good, very good. And if I may also link back, the introduction is also mentioned the 3 criteria to evaluate the spiritual system. So with this criteria, we can also evaluate what the Buddha says. Does it make sense? Does it fit into this criteria? Yeah. So thanks again, Sister Jolene, for explaining very well, very eloquently for us. So before we wrap up, anyone else would like to share? So for me, I really like this analogy. Doing so, to attempt to engage in the practice without a foundation of right view is to risk getting lost in the futility of undirected movement. Doing so might be compared to wanting to drive someplace without consulting a roadmap or listening to the suggestions of an experienced driver. One might get into the car and start to drive, but rather than approaching closer to one's destination, one is more likely to move farther away from it. Yeah. So I think this an experienced driver would be analogous to finding the right teacher, as Sister Jolene has explained. Okay, if no more comments, I think we can wrap up here. So let's do a dedication. Please recite together with me, dedication of merits. 愿消三障诸烦恼，愿得智慧真明了，普愿罪障悉消除，实是长行菩萨道。阿弥陀佛。Okay, thanks everyone for participating.
Thank you. That's all.
Thank you. Have a right few day ahead.
Hello,
Brother
Jane.
Marcel.
Thank you,
Namaste.
Marcel. Thank you, Sister Jolie.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Marcel. Thank you, Jolene.